everybody, how is it going? This is Michael here with Dweeb Culture, and I am here with Mitch.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And I am also here with Cole.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
And as you may or may not have noticed, this is my first time making an appearance for the series of Loki. Are the gods of mischief aligned, and I was able to record today. We just saw the episode, and there's a lot to unpack about it. I'm excited. So,
and now I actually want to interject here, guys. Yeah. So Michael wasn't able to make the day. We do have a recording that's going to be playing alongside us. We're going to try to time it so it appears to be a live taping, but this is a recording. That's not Michael, just so we know. It's not Michael.
Mm-hmm. Not Michael, it's a recording.
I couldn't have said that better myself, Cole. And you raised a good point about Lady Loki.
Good thing Michael's not here.
This is not actually a recording. Yeah. I am here live, or at least as live as I could be.
How impressive would that be, though?
That would be pretty good.
You record just your part, and we have to fill it in with the other parts.
Oh, yeah.
40 takes later, we kind of got it.
That would be an amazing editing feat on your part, because you're the one that are editing these videos now. So that would be just you slicing and cutting in all of everything I say. That'd be really funny. Okay, so the three things I have for this episode that I was going to start off and read, but I decided not to. The three main points that I have for this episode. Loki falls for himself, which proves to be fatal. Mobius turns against the TVA and gets pruned for it. And the timekeepers are really good at keeping time because they're robots.
Big plots.
Those are the big plots for this episode. So spoiler alert, even though I'm sure if you're watching this, you've already seen the episode. But I just want to say, because I haven't been live on this show yet, I'm really digging this series. I think 3 out of the 4 episodes have been really, really amazing. And I like it a lot. The one I didn't like that much, as I said last episode, was the last episode, just because it was super character development, character driven. And as Mitch said in the video, even though it was a very character heavy episode, there wasn't very much revealed about the characters.
Yeah.
So
a lot of dialogue with only a little bit of content.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But referring to this episode, the Nexus event, it starts off on Asgard, which I thought was really cool. I was not expecting to see Asgard starting off this episode. I'm like, oh man, are we going to go back in time and see Natalie Portman and Thor, and we're going to see all these things happen? No, we didn't see that, but we did see Sylvie getting abducted by the TVA.
Yes, right off the bat, they answered questions burning in everyone's minds. How exactly was she a variant, fighting all her life? Which I got on you, Mitch, in our last recording. Quote that you missed. Saying, I had been fighting them my entire life. And you're like, no, she didn't say that. I was like, yeah.
Well, look, kinda, because it wasn't since she was born. And she actually does say in this episode, as a line to Loki on Lamentis when they're facing impending doom, that the big problem with her variation is that she was born a woman, Loki, right? And it's it raises another question for me, because it ultimately comes back to a little bit of what we talked with the last episode. We actually did see the point of deviation where she became labeled a variant, and at least enough of a variant that they needed to eliminate it, which I guess there's degrees of this now, because we'll talk about it. So it looks like she's 10, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, but around the age of 10.
Probably around 10. Yeah.
And that's assuming she's actually 10, because remember, the real character of our Loki, at least, is thousands of years old and a giant. And this really didn't answer too much about her, other than the fact that she's been on the run since she was young. And she says, she doesn't give an exact amount of years, but she says a long time, essentially, to emphasize that she's probably just as old as our Loki is, but has been on the run for most of her life.
And I don't think Disney's going to answer that question for you. Like, I think they're just going to say they abducted her as a kid. Take it. Don't ask questions
I would
of
say
why they didn't abduct her as a baby or anything like that.
I would agree with you, with the exception of the end credit scene, which we'll talk about shortly. The thing is, for comic book fans, we know that Marvel has a multiverse. And what I mean by that is a series of different universes with the same characters, but their histories are different, their relationships are different. This is an evil version. This is a version that's, teddy bear,
Weird.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
But we were or you and I, Cole, at least, had talked about the possibility of this being a multiverse type scenario when they first showed the different variant Lokis in like the first or second episode. I think it was the second episode. And we saw that there was so much variation in these Lokis from the sacred timeline Loki that it didn't make sense with the story they were telling that these all be kind of alternate timelines that branched off the main timeline, because that means that at some point they were our Loki and then something changed and then they became the variant. And this story would or at least what we were revealed, or what Sylvie believes about herself, would disprove what our belief was. But our belief wasn't us. That's actually what the show said. It's what the show said when they set up the standard for what the sacred timeline is. So it kind of looks like what the TVA says about the sacred timeline is wrong, and maybe will be revealed something else soon.
Yeah, it basically revealed that there are multiverses. When
kind of. Yeah.
And then the other obvious question is, so obviously whoever makes the furthest in the sacred timeline, the current Loki that we know and love, is obviously the most Loki of the Lokis. He's the most he's the Rickiest Rick and the Mortiest Morty. He is the Loki that has been the Loki the longest before he did the variation. And that kind of begs the question, okay, well, Loki, they started talking about it before, and Mitch, to your credit, if this was branches off the sacred timeline, Loki's conversation with Sylvie that he had before didn't really make sense, because Sylvie said she knew her parents and continued on. Loki never knew his parents. In fact, Loki didn't even come from his parents. Loki is a frost giant.
Well, what we found out today is she might be referring to her Asgardian parents, and that brings up another question. Is Sylvie a frost giant?
A frost giant, yeah, exactly.
Because she says she was born the goddess of mischief. Loki wasn't born the god of mischief. He was born a frost giant. No. He kind of labeled himself and became the god of mischief. So this ultimately comes back to what we're saying about everything that the characters reveal seem to suggest this is a multiverse, even though the show's main storyline has told us it's not.
Exactly.
And TVA lying about everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to further that point, the variant Loki, the woman Loki, Sylvie, would have become a variant at conception, right?
Yep.
Because the sacred timeline Loki is a boy, and she grew up as a girl. So they, to us, as far as it seems, arbitrarily picked a time to actually grab that variant and bring him out. So they allowed her to live for 10 years without it being an issue, and then all of a sudden was, took her from her variant life.
Yeah, and beforehand, and Cole and I had talked about this too. I know you had been communicated this as well, but we had talked about it, the fact, like, it was possible for them to say, oh, this was the same Loki, but Loki's a shapeshifter. Like, even this Loki doesn't really look like this, right?
It's but we're past that theory. Yeah.
And we don't know anything about frost giants. Frost giants might be no sex. You don't know. So we're past that theory now. She says in this episode that she was born the goddess of mischief, which means essentially from development in the womb, this has been a variant. And that universe has therefore been a variant, and probably could have been addressed earlier. But when we talk about how they perceive variant timelines, we see the beginning of a variant timeline in this episode. It's definitely going to be something they touch on moving forward in the next 2 episodes, and we see that they address it immediately. So it's kind of odd. Kind of odd. Unanswered questions.
At the I have some questions for the conception of that Nexus event that we did see in this timeline when they started to fall for each other. That started a variant branch. And they said that they'd never seen a branch like that before. So maybe that's why they can, have a little bit of wiggle room. But if you think about how the sacred timeline works, and you pick a point. It's basically like editing a video, right? You're watching a video, you have a point, and there's a forward written story, and you see the dial just move along. So they're in real time, and then they see a real time branch coming off, but they didn't know what branch would that have been, because they ended up escaping together. So I'm just curious as to what kind of Nexus event that would have been.
Yeah.
And before, Nexus events happened because somebody was able to travel through time, or somebody deviated from the sacred timeline in a way that they weren't supposed to. But there was no deviation when they, fell for each other, right? At that moment, there was no necessarily deviation. So they were supposed to stay there and die, or they were supposed to not touch each other's legs or not hold hands, and then the guy saved them. Like, what exactly was the deviation event that started this brand new branch?
It's obviously the power of love, Michael. I mean,
yes,
love that powerful cannot exist in any timeline.
And by the way, how do you love the irony of Loki falling for himself?
I think that's
as a narcissist, as a,
part of
like
the
how great is that?
I thought that was a great story point. I thought that was a great story point.
That is fantastic.
That
was really
to go off the deviation thing, and we'll just keep it simple. I don't think that they're gonna address specifically why there was deviation, because you're right. They introduced, and this is kind of the same thing we're talking about with the multiverse. In the very first episode, they introduced a set of rules that the universe follows, that the TVA follows, and they've done nothing but break those rules since. And that could lead to a big reveal and make it satisfying payoff. But as of right now, it just raises a lot of questions. We talked about the no multiverses, sacred timeline. Any alternate multiverses actually originate from our sacred timeline, and therefore everything has the same shared history at a certain point back and then deviates from there, which we already are calling into question now with the existence of Sylvie. But in this one specifically, remember, the whole reason why Sylvie can't be traced is because she's in an apocalyptic timeline and everybody dies, so it doesn't matter what happens. Except when Loki and Sylvie are falling for each other, they actually see a variation in the timeline. So if we're going by time travel rules, that means that it was always meant that the TVA was to see that variation in the timeline and then rescue them, because that's what they do. They rescue them from the end of the world there. Or had the TVA not intervened, they would have somehow survived that apocalyptic event. That's the only thing that makes sense for why there was even a variation that showed up on the graphs, because they've already established in just the previous episode that, just 2 previous episodes ago, that apocalyptic events mask variant energy, and they cannot detect what happens at apocalyptic events. So they've broken now a second rule that they established. If this is going to be good storytelling, they will address that, and it will be a part of the big reveal at the end, probably tied to who the timekeepers are, because obviously that's a big question.
Right.
So if it's not good storytelling, they won't talk about it.
Well, let's just also remember that the TVA operates outside of time.
Yes.
Time moves differently for them there. And
so Mitch,
they can go back,
you made me just think, you raised a good point there. We could be looking potentially at a Back to the Future type of timeline now.
Yeah. Because that required time travel. Yes.
Yes. So we are looking at a circumstance now where instead of branches forming off and starting alternate realities and different timelines all on their own, you're talking about a cyclical thing. So the only foreseeable way, unless they were somehow able to get off of that planet, the only way they were getting off is if the TVA intervened. But the only reason they saw that branch in the first place is because the TVA intervened.
Yes.
So now we're looking at a time paradox instead of a branching. It's really nice when timelines branch off because you can kind of keep that all in your head. But now if you're looking at a Back to the Future situation where you go back in time and you get with your mom and then you start to never exist anymore, that's kind of the same type of thing we have going here. The only reason they saw that branch is because TVA intervened.
Yes.
And the only reason TVA intervened is because they saw that branch.
So
right?
if they address that, this could be great storytelling and still have a satisfying end. But this is where I'm worried because they only have 2 episodes left. Yeah. If they don't address that, you're going to have a lot of people that are like, wait, what? Like, you established the rules. Why can't you operate in your own rules?
Honestly, with the way this is going, especially that end credit scene, which we're going to get to, I don't know that they're going to have enough time to address that issue.
Now, see, the end credit scene makes me think they will. Cole, I mean, we're already talking about it. What'd you think of the end credit scene, dude?
All right, so end credit scene, like, forever throughout this show, I thought the glowy sticks, prune? When someone gets pruned, they get erased from existence entirely. But this, I'm guessing, it showed a bunch of different Lokis from what I saw. That's my take from it. So I'm saying that they just get banished to some type of TVA created world where they all have their own universes, different types of Lokis, different types of Mitches, different types of Coles and Michaels. But I doubt that's the case, since the Loki that was talking to our Loki saying, you need to move or else you're going to die. But, he could be referring to maybe evil Lokis trying to kill every other Loki. So that's
you're
what
saying,
I'm going down.
You're saying when you saw the credit, it suggested to you that the pruning devices are not what we thought they were. We thought that they were just disintegrating people, and you think that it actually sends them either to some sort of prison world or space outside of time or something like that?
Some type of world that just contains all your cells. So Loki got sent to all his Lokis. Owen Wilson got sent to all his Owen Wilsons. I forget the character's name.
Mobius.
Mobius, yes. Something like Morpheus, but different.
Michael, what'd you think?
When I saw that end credit scene, my mind blew. So when I saw, my reaction to, we'll get into that one later in a little bit. But when I saw him wake up, Cole kind of brings up a good point to me, and I had no idea what to think when I saw him wake up with a bunch of Lokis. I don't think that it's just Lokis there. I don't think they're going to their own personal place. I think it could potentially the pruning, the pruning spears, for lack of a better word. I think could be a teleportation portal. So the same technology that's used in their little, 3DSs to open up
iPads.
A portal in their little iPads. Well, when they opened up, it literally looked like a 3DS. I bet a 3DS is going to come out with the skin of one of those things, because it literally looked like a 3DS.
They're not making any more 3DSs, Michael. They stopped manufacturing them.
That's a bummer. But it also looked like okay, you have this super crazy technology that opens up portals, and then you're throwing up Unix code on the top. There's Tony Stark invented hollow projections and all that stuff, but you're still using analog digital, right?
Well, that's just their world. Yeah.
I guess so.
Well,
but in any case, in any case, I think those pruners, they may be the same technology as those time things, and they perhaps were brainwashed to think that is deletion, so that's what they were always going on. But instead, what it actually does is send them to an alternate demon world or something like that, some type of, not necessarily hell, but some type of multiverse where they can't get out of. There's probably not that much technology in there, so they're not able to escape that multiverse. They may be controlling that world so that technology doesn't get created, specifically so that they can send people there that they prune.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be just a world of the variants they erased, or they think they erased.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, are you guys ready for my theory?
Mm-hmm.
Let's hear it.
So, Michael, anyway, what do you think?
So, I think you're right about the pruner being a teleportation device, specifically because, do you remember what's on the other side of the pruner?
Nothing. The end of the stick.
A spear. Sylvie killed 2 people by running them through at the sharp end of the pruner. So if it was deletion, why is there a freaking spear on the other side of it?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? It's only when they, I mean, she even fought whatever the judge's name is, and they both were holding the pruner side on the reverse grip of their weapons as they were attacking at each other. It didn't make sense if this is a one touch, you're disintegrated type thing. So I think you're right with it being a teleportation device, and here's where my theory gets a little wild. I don't know there's no one character for me that that I know from the comics that ties back to the Timekeepers. I actually don't know anything about them from the comics. That most of my Marvel comic knowledge is limited to kind of certain major storylines, crossovers, X-Men. I really like the X-Men, things like that. This is a time travel agency. There are a couple major time travel villains in Marvel, but I don't think any of them are the quote-unquote timekeeper. The big one would be Kang the Conqueror. Chances are they're going to save a character like that for the MCU, though, because this would be like the next Thanos type of threat. Instead,
so what's your theory, Mitch?
My theory is that whatever the timekeepers actually are, they eat people. And I think that they teleport with the pruning device these variants to whatever world that the timekeepers eat them on, which is why
feed on them.
Yeah, which is why the alternate Lokis tell Loki, "Oh, you're not dead yet." More of a, "Hey, this is a pretty bad spot, and we're gonna see some sort of." I don't know if it's Galactus because he's kind of the planet eater.
Galactus,
but some sort of ultimate.
But he's a world eater.
Yep, some sort of ultimate evil that has enough power to run an agency like the TVA, and
like
the
TVA's, a Matrix
type.
World.
And the TVA's real purpose is feed them. So they go and collect all these variants, so they won't really F up Tyne too much, but they feed off the variants and eat them.
But they're hungry and they got to get fed.
I don't know. I mean, that's my theory. I don't know. We'll see if it's true or not.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Side note: when they mention androids, they're just a bunch of androids. My mind went immediately to Dr. Doom.
I thought you were thinking Ultron, because
no,
Dr. Doom's not an android.
No, he's not an android, but he creates androids in the comic.
That's true.
But that's a bit of a stretch. But I was like, oh.
Also, if he had the power of time travel, I think he'd do other things with it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Latvia. So one of the things we're kind of glossing over, and I'll get back to it because I liked our conversation about that. But before we see Loki's death, we see Mobius's death, and we see Mobius investigating the TVA, and we see Mobius kind of starting to doubt everything he's ever known, and then we see B13, B12, I can't remember.
Whatever.
B13. We see B13 kind of questioning everything too. And Lady Loki, Sylvie, has the ability to unlock memories. So it kind of seems like all that was validated, all that was true. All these people were variants pulled out of this timeline for whatever reason. We don't know why. Or at least why those people, and those people in particular, were pulled out of their timelines. But we see Mobius kind of question all that, and then ultimately gets him killed for it. Now, when he got killed, when he got pruned, I was very, very shocked.
Me too.
That took me by surprise. And then by the end of the episode, before I saw the end credit scene, I saw Loki go, and I'm like, dude, those are my two favorite characters. Are Loki and Mobius just got pruned. Okay, if they continue this Loki show without Loki,
it doesn't make sense. That's why you had to be.
I'm gonna continue to watch.
Yeah, that's why he had to
But
be
that's why I was
alive.
very happy to see that end credit scene to be like, okay, good. It's not over for the God of Mischief as we've come to know.
And probably not for Mobius either.
Yeah.
And probably not for Mobius either. I really hope he comes back. I liked Owen Wilson's character. He was completely void and gone in the last episode. They brought him back in this episode, and I really liked him.
Yeah, he's pretty great.
But so what do you guys think? Do you think that Mobius getting pruned and RC20, who was the one that originally got pruned because she was starting to remember, do you think that in and of itself is gonna have a lasting effect across everybody else inside the TVA? Are they going to start to question and think why these people were killed? And are they going to remember? Is there going to be an inside rebellion, an inside civil war about this?
I mean, because Sylvie, right? Because Sylvie's still at the TVA, maybe she can expose the truth somehow and spread, skepticism. So possibly. But what I also think will happen is we haven't seen the last of Mobius. I think he may be in that variant world. I'm kind of changing my theory. I think it's a variant world where they'll all team up. People that have found onto the truth will team up on that world and make their way back to the TVA somehow. That's what I'm thinking going forward. And yes, Sylvie will possibly try exposing the truth in the TVA itself. That's what I'm thinking.
So maybe the way Loki gets out of there is Sylvie might be able to find the world or find the teleportation or whatever that she needs to in order to get to Loki's current world, and
possibly.
Then maybe they bring them all back to the TVA.
Yeah, I'd say Sylvie's like still trying to figure out what the heck's going on, right? It's trying to find the Wizard of Oz, because that's essentially what it was, right?
Yeah.
Like someone's behind those androids. So
pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Exactly.
So
she's going to try and get to the truth.
We've essentially found out that everything in the TVA is a sham. What Sylvie does next, I don't know. She wanted to leave that judge character alive so that she could see whatever it is that she's going to do next. I think and hope kind of that this next episode outlines the facts of reality. So we have the TVA's truth, and now we learn the real truth, and that carries and sets up into ultimately the showdown with whatever the timekeepers are, whatever the entity that runs the TVA is in this final episode. In the final episode. Remember, we only have 2 episodes left. This was episode 4. This is a 6-episode season. So next is the penultimate, and then strong finish with the finale. And we've been getting that from these other Marvel shows. So really, this is pretty exciting. It's leading up to a very interesting conclusion. Ultimately, to sum up my take on the episode, I have to really agree with Michael about I really enjoy the general direction of this show. I look forward to it every week. It's carrying me through, and it seems to be impactful to the Marvel universe. Not in a way that directly impacts our characters, such as the Avengers, but in a way that better defines the universe and introduces new aspects. Like, I loved things like Doctor Strange. Now magic's in the universe, and it's a whole different thing. And then I loved Guardians of the Galaxy because that was our first real venture to the vastness of space and alien races. And before that, if you remember, the only thing we got about space was Thor and the 7 different realms that he knows about, right?
And now we get a talking raccoon.
But now with Loki, we also understand that there's creatures and entities that exist outside of time and that operate through time. And really, that's where it gets pretty exciting, because now we get to see, hey, this is a whole nother aspect of the Marvel Universe that in all likelihood they will pull into the main story in some way, the same way that they have with everything else. I mean, the Sorcerer Supreme and the wizards of the Marvel Universe were responsible for bringing all the backup to Captain, Thor, Hulk, and Iron Man in the final conclusion of Endgame, right? Yeah. They would not have beat Thanos if it weren't for Sorcerer Supreme and his associates summoning all the forces of the world. Look at how huge of an impact Wakanda has had on the MCU. And that all stems from, hey, we're going to introduce this new thing. And then guess what, guys? It's a part of the universe moving forward. And
just filters through.
Yeah, and this has the potential of doing that same thing. It's great because we saw with WandaVision small changes. Okay, this is specifically Wanda's story. And then, hey, there's a way for Vision to return. Small. That's not like world breaking. Captain America, Falcon and the Winter Soldier retcon to Captain America and the Winter Soldier. A little bit bigger. They introduce a new Captain America. That's pretty big for the main storyline, because if you didn't tune in to this show, guess what? The next Avengers has Falcon as Captain America. That's pretty important. And then now with Loki, we get to finally see an entirely new aspect they're introducing. Yeah.
So we got to see the development with the Avengers characters, and now we're seeing development with the opposition. What's possible? Who they're going to be facing after this?
And a possible and female Loki as a antagonist villain.
Yeah, that may come in to operate counterpart of the female Thor that we're going to be introduced to in Love and Thunder. But ultimately, I think this could be a clue, because it has been a question for a lot of people where the MCU is going to go next. A lot of people have thought, well, they're going to go the route of the Skrull invasion. If you remember the Skrulls from Captain Marvel. Some people have thought they're going to go the route of Galactus, a new, universal terror. But
Galactus was the one in Doctor Strange, right? Wasn't that the main villain? No, that was Dormammu.
No, that was Dormammu. Yes, Galactus was in the Fantastic Four movies, which with the acquisition of Fox, Disney now owns the rights to use Fantastic Four villains again.
Yes,
and
Galactus that is not canon.
No, the Fantastic Four movies aren't, but because they own the rights now, they can use Galactus. They would not have been able to use Galactus beforehand. Now they can, because he is a Fantastic Four villain. And with that, another Fantastic Four villain, which has been my theory about a new major villain for the MCU, is Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror is a majorly powerful Thanos level villain who is all about time travel. And it's possible that this show kind of introduces at least a back door that we can be introduced to Kang through. So I'm really curious about that, and if that's the case, because you have to look at this show through the through the goggles of, this is the Marvel universe, and what does introducing all these time travel rules and time travel aspects to the universe really do to benefit the story. And I think you're right on
things going forward.
Well, I think Michael's right on the money with saying this is probably going to introduce whatever the next villains possibly could be or are, or at least a way for them to introduce themselves into the storyline. And if I'm thinking time travel villains, guys, I'm thinking Kang. So hopefully, I hope so, that would be a really interesting direction to take the Avengers moving forward.
Definitely. Yeah, super exciting. Also could be Galactus.
Yeah, could be.
We were thinking, so many possibilities. Or even, I want to say Doctor Doom just because I got my mind on him. But him too, potentially.
I'm sure they're going to add him in. For me, I think they're just going to wait till they do their own Fantastic Four movie. It's so hard to introduce him without the Fantastic Four. They're so intricately tied.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to it. This Loki series really does have me really looking forward to every episode that comes out. Much more than WandaVision, more than Captain America and the Winter Soldier. This I'm really looking forward to, because this is world building. This is not character development necessarily. This is world building and seeing what the next phase of the MCU is. So I'm super into it.
Yeah, same here. I'm super into it. This last episode is like a mid-season
finale, kind of mid-season finale. Yeah, usually
mid-season finale. Like
Walking Dead would do it after episode 10 out of whatever 16 or 8 out of 16. Yeah,
exactly. Because like as I was watching, I was like, dang, is this the last episode? Because it could have served as a very bad wrap up to a series.
And they added a post-credit scene, and they've only done that on like the final episodes of seasons so far. And now they added one, episode 4. It's not even the penultimate episode. But I think that we have to keep consistent with what we've been doing every episode. So let's start with Cole. Cole, how do you rate this episode, dude?
Man, I've been giving the last ones like 8.5, 7s or whatever. This might have to be 9 for me. Yeah, A-, just because, or maybe 9.5 even. Jeez. So it was pretty good. I mean, yeah, Loki like basically falling in love, and with himself. That's just good writing right there. And a lot of people dying, not really dying, getting pruned, but finding out the truth. A lot of truths, more about the lady Loki's origin, when she got abducted, and just what she's been going through. And it always bothers me in shows where the truth doesn't come out fast enough. And with this show, it's like the time is just right. You don't have to wait too long for people to realize something's up. So yeah, 9.5 for me.
All right, Michael, what do you think?
You know, I'm gonna be right up there as well. I think the first 2 episodes were a 9 for me. I really enjoyed those 2. World building. The last episode 3, was probably closer to like a 7.5 for me. Maybe 7, just because, again, for all those reasons. I like the world building stuff. And there wasn't a lot of world building in the last episode. This episode, a ton of world building, we got to see the timekeepers. Not only did we get to see the timekeepers, we got to learn that they were robots. They weren't real. We got Mobius questioning everything. He dies. That knocks it down 0.5 for me because I really liked Mobius.
He gets pruned.
And then he gets pruned. That's true. He gets pruned. And then Loki gets pruned, and that brought it down to like a 1 for me. But then that end credit scene brought it back up to a 9.5, because then I realized, oh, Loki's not really dead. But yeah, so I would say this episode, if it's not the best episode, it is tied for the best episode. This episode was really, really, really good. Came off really, really strong, especially after last week's. I thought they were going to go into more character development, and this time they did character development with story development, with world building. And I really enjoyed that part of it. So it's got to be a 9.5 for me. I really liked this episode. A lot of stuff happened.
I think I mostly agree with what you guys say. This episode for me was exciting and stressful. I know it's an odd way to put it, but they've introduced so many things, and it's definitely interesting things. It's definitely things that, I mean, have allowed us to have 37 minutes of a conversation so far. I am really enjoying the show. I cannot wait for the next episode, which is what tells me that it's definitely going to be rated high. But they've set up so many things that at the back of my head, I'm thinking like, I hope they answer that, because it's going to affect the overall review of the show if they just leave that out there or skip past it or don't address what they've introduced. But on an individual episode review, as of now, I'm probably going to give it a 9.5. And the only reason why I'm not giving it a 10 is because I thought that the choice, the scene that they chose for the time prison that he was in was lazy. I know that they wanted to do hey guys, it's Sif. She was in one Thor movie and then she was on Agents of Marvel, but we couldn't get a crossover with a major character, so here you go. I know they wanted to do that, but the scene was Loki cut her hair while she was sleeping, and she's mad and punches him in the face, and he's like, oh, God of mischief. Like, we've seen Loki already. He's capable of way more than that. Think about Thor Ragnarok and the whole, he's taken the place of Odin, and he has a statue of himself built, and Matt Damon playing himself, all that, right? It was so funny, and they could have done so much more with this particular scene.
Yeah, and they could have picked a really interesting memory to go back to, something storytelling, something about Loki that kind of brings up, like, maybe maybe when he was younger, he was rejected because he was a frost.
Yeah.
Or, or something like that. Something like more character, not just,
I just thought,
well,
that was kind of a lazy scene. They're going to use just this one set piece, and she walks in and says, "You cut my hair, pa!" And then, "You cut my hair, pa!" Okay.
Well,
like, this is his big punishment, is the big scene he's supposed to feel guilty about is that she says nobody likes you after he cut her hair. I mean, that was the only...
For argument's sake, I think it was good because it ties in with the romantic scene between him and Lady Loki.
Yeah.
And just that it brings up the feeling of that he wants to be loved, he wants to be with someone, and that just they touched into his emotions, and that's why they put him in that type of prison hell thing.
I get that. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a 9.5 out of 10. I'm talking about they rated this thing high. But if there was one thing that kept it from being a 10 out of 10, it's, I think the execution of that could have been better. That's all.
There's three real quick things I wanna just point out that I've noticed in this episode. One of the questions I had about the reality of the episode, when Sylvie was a little girl and got abducted and punched her way out and left into a time portal, why didn't she have a thing on her neck like every other prisoner does to prevent her from doing that? She was the only one that didn't have a thing on her neck as a prisoner, and that would have stopped that entire process from happening. So I feel like they did that just
years ago. They didn't have the
sure,
technology.
Maybe they didn't have it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, and then the next one was, okay, you're bringing two highly trained assassin Lokis up to meet the timekeepers, and you brought 5 guards. Okay, come on. There's going to be more guards in there protecting the timekeepers,
But they aren't the timekeepers.
Well, yeah, but everybody thought they were the timekeepers.
Did they?
Okay, that's fair. And then the last comment... That's fair. And then the last quick comment I wanted to make. This is the first episode that we've seen, or at least to my knowledge, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but of Loki having any romantic interest or anything at all. We got 2 glimpses of it. Before this, there was never a girl or never any type of romantic lead or romantic interest. We never thought of Loki as having a romantic interest before this episode, and we got 2 glimpses, one of Sylvie and then one of, I can't remember her name, but in the flashback going back and forth. We've never seen Loki in a romantic encounter or anything before this, so I just wanted to point that out, that we get to see Loki having a romantic interest. That's a little bit of character development right there, because up until this, I didn't even know he was interested in girls. I thought that was just something he wasn't interested in.
I don't think that Sif was a romantic interest for him, because she's Thor's original romantic interest. I saw more from that scene that he just didn't like being told that no one would ever love him, and that was the thing that kind of was his hell that he was facing.
I thought he had, like, for the PG audience out there, I thought he had, like, spent the night with her and then he cut her hair type of deal.
No.
It's just like a prank thing.
He's the god of mischief. Cut your hair while you're sleeping. Okay. That's all it was.
Remember, the show's called Loki, so that means he's our hero, which means heroes get girlfriends. Villains don't get girlfriends. He's a villain in all the other movies.
Look,
now he's our hero.
They actually talked about romance. They actually talked about romance in the last episode. In the last episode, when sitting across from each other, both Lady Loki...
talking about it big time.
Yeah, both Lady Loki and our Loki say, like, hey, I've dated princesses and princes, and nothing ever worked out. That's it. That's essentially what they said.
Yeah.
So you're right. They haven't ever hinted at anything involving a romantic interest with that character before. But, if they were going to do it, this is the place to do it.
Sure, absolutely. In his own TV show? Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
But overall, I think we're all very high on this the show for right now. I'm really excited to see how this ends. And thank you guys for tuning in, sticking with us for these last 44 minutes. And come back each week, because we're going to be knocking these out all the way until the end of the series, and kind of talking about the implications that whatever is revealed from here, whatever it is, has for the rest of the MCU moving forward.
If you are still with us, please comment down below, even just to say that, hey, I watched the whole thing. We have not gotten a comment yet. I want to get a comment. Let's get a comment from a listener. Please, even just hi. We would appreciate it.
Yeah, please.
Please.
All right, guys. Thank you. That's all for this episode.
Take
Good to see
care.
you.
Live long and may the force be with you.
Dude, we've not been doing that without Michael. All right, yeah, live long and may the force be with you. All right, later,
all
guys.
that.